Welcome to the video tutorial on how to integrate a Shopware6 eShop with the Boxalino API using the all-at-once strategy. Before we continue, let's review the main elements of the integration strategy. If you follow the public documentation, you are already aware that the migration to API consists of three core modules: the data exporter layer, the framework layer, and the integration layer, which is the objective of this video tutorial. The first two modules are provided by Boxalino and are installed as are. The services which come with the data exporter or framework layer are not rewriting nor changing the default Shopware6 behavior. The content of these two modules is integrated in the integration layer upon integrator's choice. The integration layer is part of your setup codebase, and as an integrator, you are empowered to make decisions based on your project requirement. The integration use case, all at once, is fully based on the generic integration guidelines, which is provided by Boxalino. In this video tutorial, we consider that you have already completed step number 1, which is basically creating a Shopware6 module in your project. This module is the integration layer. The created module does not need any code and must be uninstalled and not activated. As you can see, we have the integration layer plugin, which is both not installed and not active. The process will continue with step number 2, which is adding the first two layers, the exporter layer and the framework layer, to your Shopware6 setup. We can use the latest tags as well. Once Composer adds the plugins, you can then proceed to installing and activating them. As you can see, we have the two repositories available. Next, we will continue by activating and installing the two repositories, Boxilino Exporter and Boxilino Real-Time User Experience. This is a generic Shopware6 step. Once this is done, we continue to step number 3, which is to download the integration repository, and we can use the latest available tag. Step number 3 is completed. For step number 4, we have to review the downloaded copy of the Composer JSON. This is because there might be other extended features which you can decide if you either want them locally or you do not want them. Step number 4 is completed. Next, we have to extract the downloaded source . And once having done that, step number 5 is completed. For step number 6, we have to remove the Shopware plugin class from the source directory. For step number 7, we have to copy the source folder in our project integration layer. So we open our project, this is our repository, and we are going to paste it in there. The files are added. Next, with step number 8, we are going to replace the namespace from the copied code with the one of our project. In this case, Boxilino Real-Time User Experience Integration is going to be replaced with Integration Layer plugin. So we have to do replace in file, and we have to replace it with Integration Layer plugin. Done. Once this is done, we can continue to step number 9. Step number 9 is about installing and activating our project. So we have to do plugin, install, and activate and clear cache on integration layer plugin. As you can see at step number 10, it is recommended to rebuild the storefront and the administration theme. Rebuilding the themes is done because there are a few JavaScript extensions in the added repositories. Firstly, the framework layer adds a shopping experience CMS element called narrative. Its use will be described later. Secondly, the integration layer has custom logic for the autocomplete client-side integration and for the listing plugin JavaScript file. Step number 10 is completed. To continue the process, at step 11, we will configure the first two layers, framework and data exporter. The configuration options are described on each of the repository's wiki page, with the links in the documentation. As it is mentioned, we should set the exporter configuration per sales channel and disable where not in use. This is a practice you can follow for both repositories because Boxilino will provide different credentials for every sales channel. In our demo store, I only have one sales channel, which is storefront, and we're going to configure that one. So let's start with the configuration for the data integration layer. Switch to a sales channel, and I will take you through the base requirements for configuration in order to kick off your account. For more extended configurations and what they mean, you can review the configurations wiki page from the data integration Shopware6 repository. Activate the repository, activate the test mode, disable the development data index, set the data integration key, the data integration secret, set the batch size which is relevant for your data store. If you do not want to use the data batch size, just set a very high number, like 200,000 or 1,000,000, so that the whole content is going to get exported in one single load. Skip the instant update configurations and just go to full data integration. Enable every mode, which is product, user, and order, and set the data integration endpoint. Data integration endpoint is being described for each type of integration and is available in the public repository, as you can see here. For the purpose of the full data integration, we're going to use this endpoint. After you have set your account name, integration key, and integration secret, click on Save. Moving on to the framework configurations. Once again, we activate it on the sales channel which is in use. You have to use the Boxalino API credentials provided in your email. If the provided configurations are for dev false, do not enable the use development data index flag. This flag must match the one configured in the data exporter layer as well, which in our case is disabled. So if you set the data exporter use development data index flag to true, you will have to use the API credentials provided for dev equals true. I personally prefer to have the test mode activated. This will also log the API requests in your server logs. The JavaScript API key is used for autocomplete requests. You can as well manually insert the endpoint. So as you can see, the structure is domain, which is main bxcloud.com narrative, your account name, and then API.on. Do not forget to enable the tracker because you will have to test it. Once you add the account name and configurations, please click on Save. Once all configurations are saved, step number 11 is completed. Reminder, you can always check each configuration's meaning and your configuration options on the configurations wiki page from every repository. For step number 12, we are going to run the data exporter command in order to initialize the account's data index. This is the minimum requirement in order to initialize a data index which will provide valid API response for your eShop. The data integration is done directly over Boxalino's Google Cloud Platform setup and integrates the data which are exported with the BigQuery data warehouse immediately when data are pushed. The new data integration provides new API to monitor and control the success and completion of the process directly from your environment. Based on the eShop size, the data index creation or update can take up to 6-15 minutes. The data integration repository, or DI, will log every step of the process. As you can see, in order to export the product information, we first export the languages, following by the doc attribute value, and finalizing with all the information for your product. Until the process has a successful response, the data index will not be available for your API requests. Let's review the available documentation for the Boxilino data structure in the Confluence domain. For the data integration repository, your eShop data is exported to Google Cloud Storage as JSON files and loaded in your account's BigQuery dataset. Every document and its schema is documented. The data integration process consists of a series of load requests and a final sync request. You can identify every step in the data integration process logs on your server. While the data structure is processed, please continue with step number 13, the import of proposed narrative guidelines in Boxilino admin. Step number 13 will give you a first-hand experience to the Boxilino Intelligence admin. The Intelligence admin is a platform where your account configurations are created. So let's review the step, which is about loading the narrative JSON guidelines in the Boxilino Intelligence admin. There are two ways to do so. Either ask us on the setup channel by providing your project's integration layer namespace, or by doing it yourself. This tutorial will take you through the second method, do it yourself. First, let's check out the JSON guidelines page. On the page, we will find guidelines. First, we will see a link to the Boxilino Intelligence admin wiki page. This page describes how you can import configurations for your account. Secondly, it tells us how to adapt the generic guidelines to our project's namespace. As always, by copy-paste replace. The link to Boxilino Intelligence admin is available on the Intelligence admin page. In order to log in, you have to use your account and password as provided by Boxilino. Let's follow the upload order from the documentation. So we have to copy each of JSON content in the required path from our Intelligence admin. First, we have to copy and load the content for template resources. Go to Intelligence admin, Advanced, Template Resources. At the bottom of the page, left corner, we will see an import button. Click on it, paste, import, and it's done. Next element to review is the merchandising facets. The facets offered as sample are some default product properties for any Shopware6 account because they are part of the exported data. Going to the Intelligence admin in Merchandising Facets, we will find again the Import button on the page, paste the content, click on Import. As you can see, these facets will appear on the navigation and search contexts. Next elements to load are marketing layout blocks. The layout block is your CMS element. Because it has set up specific content like template name, you will have to rewrite the namespace. Open your editor of choice, paste the content, and let's follow the replace requirements. So you have to replace Boxalino real-time user experience integration with our plugin name, which is integration layer plugin. Next, we have to copy, go to marketing layout block, identify the import button, paste our content, and click on import. Next, we are going to see a list of layout elements uploaded in your configurations. Next element is menu marketing narratives. Same as in the prior case, so let's double click, copy, go to narratives, click on import, and load all of the narratives which are provided with our Json guidelines. As a Shopware6 integrator, think of the narrative as a shopping experience layout, and layout blocks are the CMS elements you can drag and drop in your layout. The last elements to load are some default strategies which are used for the autocomplete. We will find them at the bottom of the page. So we have to go to Strategies, Touchpoint Optimizers, find the search box, and open the search context. Again, we have the Import button, click on Import, and save. Due to the nature of the client-side integration for autocomplete, the API return fields must be configured in this use case. Once this is done, we have to click on Save and Test. This will take a while, but it will save your test configurations and let you know if there are any errors with the loaded content. As mentioned prior, the use of Intelligence Admin is also described in the Boxilino Intelligence Admin wiki page from the Integration Guidelines repository. After loading the content, you should review the deploy steps. Because we have enabled the test mode in the framework layer, as seen in our integration framework configuration, it is enough for us just to do save and test. If the test flag is disabled, the API request will check your account production configurations. To enable your narrative and layout changes in production, we will have to publish them once save and test is finished. Save and test, we will have to save. In order to publish, we go to Deployment, Publishing, and clicking on Publish All. This completes our step number 13. Step number 14 is a hands-on experience on the Shopware6 CMS element for the narrative API content. As mentioned in our documentation, that is required in order to enable navigation or add elements to the home page. On the Confluence page dedicated to the CMS element, we can find information about it, configuration options and every definition for it, recommended practices, and a technical insight on how the CMS request is done. In order to complete step number 14, we have to follow the recommended practices. For a transparent integration, we recommend to create 3 different layouts which are going to use for CMS pages. So let's go to Content, Shopping Experiences, Landing Pages, Create New Layout. So let's follow let's review the requirements. For step number 1, we have to create a Boxalino navigation sidebar landing page, which will have a Boxilino narrative element CMS and a navigation block on the left. Sidebar, that's the name. The Boxalino element is part of commerce Boxilino narrative element. Next, we should add the sidebar navigation as well. For configurations, we are going to let the CMS element know that it's a sidebar layout. We will add the return number of products on the page. We will set that yes, we want to have facets on the view. And for the filter category, it's going to be used the context of the current category. And it's done. Next, we have to create the Boxalino full layout landing page. So we go to landing pages, create new layout, landing page, full width, and it's going to be called Boxalino full, on which we will add the Boxalino API narrative element. Whichever property we are defining here for the shopping experience, we can always rewrite them on the category page when actually using the layout. The third layout is called Boxalino sidebar, which is a layout landing page once again, sidebar, and it only has one element, the narrative element. Next. Because it is a sidebar layout, we have to let know our environment that it's a sidebar layout. Configure the number of products, which is, if it's left blank, it's going to use 12, but it is actually a required property. And as a filter, it's going to be used the current category. And this is done. So at this point, we have completed step number 14, since we have created 3 layouts: Boxalino sidebar, Boxalino full, and the navigation sidebar. As it is mentioned in the documentation, we have succeeded to have configured and installed the data exporter layer, the framework layer, which is making the API requests, and the integration layer has been duplicated in your project codebase. As an integrator, you are empowered to review the content of your integration layer, which are also described in the integration review steps. Let's add the CMS element. We will change the layout to Boxalino full, and then we're going to edit the content. Instead of navigation, we're going to set home, 10 products, independent content, and the filter is going to be used, the one for the sales channel category navigation. And we are going to save the category as well. So let's check our home page. As you can see, this is our home widget with the title as configured in your narrative layout. If you want to review the narrative layout, you have to go to your narratives menu and open the home narrative. Here you can see it is built on the product slider element, which has some properties defined on it and a property called title. If you review the product slider layout block, you are going to see which template is being used. In this case, we are using the template from our own repository, which is narrative element CMS element product slider, and we can find it in our own integration layer, narrative element. The template is based on the Shopware6 template for the product slider, but it has been adapted to use the API response elements from the block property. In this section here, you can see how the title it is being loaded on the slider. As mentioned in the documentation, in order to replace your category listing with the API response, you have to add CMS elements on your layout used on the category itself. So let's choose two categories. In this case, we have health and electronics and games and home. And let's define the CMS elements for each. So let's say health and electronics is going to use the Boxilino sidebar. We do not have to change the widget requests. We can, however, say yes, it's going to have facets and the content will be updated based on customer input, and the filter can be used the current category. If we refresh, we should be able to see the output of the new layout. Next, for the games and home, let's set the other layout which we have created, which is the one with the navigation and sidebar. Same as before, we do not have to change the properties of the category. And here is the API content as provided from Boxilino. The navigation element is the one provided by Shopware6, the facets are Boxilino, the toolbar of sorting is coming from Boxilino, same as the product listing, and the pagination at the bottom. All of these elements are part of your API narrative as it has been built in the narrative menu. Based on your CMS configuration on the element, for the position sidebar, we have a conditional layout. In this case, the conditional is if the property position sidebar exists in the request or it doesn't exist. So, in case if it exists, we have a listing wrapper for the main content, which is made up of the toolbar with pagination and sorting, your product listing and the pagination itself. And if there is no sidebar request, we will only display the content as you see on a full Boxilino layout. Another feature which is deployed with the all-at-once integration strategy is the Autocomplete. Autocomplete is server-side with the JavaScript on your side, and it has a server fallback. And in this case, you see the Boxilino API response autocomplete, which is client-side driven. So we have textual suggestions, we have product recommendations, and we have the generic Shopware6 link. For the search, we have a sidebar layout, which is as well part of your integration configuration, and you can always edit every piece of code in your integration layer. If we were to click on one of the products, we are going to see the cross-selling replacement on the product itself. All of these 4 blocks are part of your API narrative linked, called cross-selling, linked to one of the widgets, which is accessories. As you can see, it adds 4 blocks for every different type of request. So at the end of this tutorial, we have installed and activated the framework layer, the data exporter layer. We managed to build your project integration layer based on the integration guidelines provided by Boxilino. At the same time, we did a quick integration review by adding a CMS element on the home page, which follows the practice for the CMS context integration. We have also applied the recommended practices for CMS elements by creating the layouts. We have also replaced some of our category views with API content response. We have reviewed the autocomplete, and we have reviewed the search. A small view of the product detail page has been presented as well. The rest elements you have to read and follow up with the documentation on what needs to be done based on your own project requirements. As always, all the integration steps are available on the wiki page, which is part of the R2OX integration software repository.